Nestled within a picturesque neighborhood, my private lake was more than just a body of water. It was the heart of our community. Framed by lush trees and dotted with blooming wildflowers, it offered a serene escape from the hustle and bustle of daily life. Residents cherished this tranquil spot for fishing, kayaking, and family gatherings. It served as a common ground where neighbors could relax and enjoy nature, away from the prying eyes of the outside world. However, the harmony of our little community was frequently disrupted by the presence of the HOA, or Homeowners Association. While they were initially established to uphold property values and maintain communal standards, they often overstepped their bounds. At the forefront of this authority stood Karen, an outspoken member known for her strict interpretations of rules and her unwavering commitment to enforcing them. Her penchant for micromanaging every aspect of life in our neighborhood had earned her a reputation that elicited both laughter and exasperation among residents. The HOA's influence extended deep into our daily lives, dictating everything from lawn care to exterior paint colors. But what truly irked many was Karen's tendency to organize events that seemed more about asserting control than fostering community spirit. When she announced she would be hosting a swimming party at my private lake, I couldn't help but feel a wave of irritation wash over me. Not only did this feel like an invasion of my space, but it also highlighted the growing tension between personal freedoms and communal governance. As I stood on the shore, watching Karen's preparations unfold, I knew this was more than just another gathering. It was a catalyst for conflict. Little did I know that my response would set off a chain reaction that would forever change the dynamics of our neighborhood. The day of the swimming party announcement dawned like any other, but the atmosphere quickly shifted when Karen posted her invitation on the community bulletin board. With bold lettering and an air of self-importance, she proclaimed that all residents were welcome to join her for a fun-filled day by the lake. My heart sank as I read her message, realizing that she intended to turn my cherished space into a bustling social hub without even consulting me. The invitation detailed a Saturday afternoon gathering complete with barbecues, games, and, of course, swimming. Karen encouraged everyone to bring their families and swim gear, and she promised to supply refreshments. As I scanned the list of RSVPs that quickly began to accumulate, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It was as if my private oasis had been transformed into a public pool overnight. What struck me most was the audacity of it all. Karen had never once asked for my permission or even bothered to discuss her plans with me before making them public. The lake was mine. I maintained it, and I had always envisioned it as a peaceful retreat for quiet reflection rather than a venue for raucous parties. As neighbors began to pass by my property, whispering about the upcoming event, I could see their excitement mixed with curiosity about how I would respond. Some residents seemed eager for a day of fun, while others shared my unease about the disruption this party would bring. After all, it wasn't just about the noise or the crowd, it was about respect, something that felt increasingly absent in our interactions with Karen and the HOA. As I contemplated my options, a plan began to form in my mind, one that would make my feelings known loud and clear. As the date of the swimming party drew closer, tensions within the neighborhood began to simmer. Conversations that once revolved around gardening tips and local events now shifted to an undercurrent of frustration regarding Karen's announcement. Residents who had previously enjoyed a sense of camaraderie started to take sides, creating a palpable divide. Some neighbors were excited about the prospect of a lively gathering, viewing it as an opportunity to connect with one another and enjoy the summer sun. They envisioned laughter echoing off the water and children splashing joyfully in the lake. But others, like myself, felt increasingly uncomfortable with the idea of a party being held without my consent or consideration for my privacy. The notion that my personal space would be overrun by unfamiliar faces felt like a violation, and I wasn't alone in this sentiment. I overheard snippets of conversations during morning walks, people expressing their mixed feelings about Karen's party. "Isn't it a bit presumptuous?" one neighbor questioned, while another noted, "I can't believe she didn't even ask him first." As I listened, I noticed a few nodding in agreement with my stance, while others dismissed our concerns as mere grumbling. The divide only deepened as Karen ramped up her promotional efforts for the event. She plastered flyers around the community and shared her excitement on social media, painting the party as a chance to strengthen neighborhood bonds. This only fueled my irritation. She seemed blissfully unaware or simply dismissive of the discomfort she was causing. I could feel the pressure mounting, not just from Karen's insistence, but also from my neighbors' opinions swirling around me. I knew I needed to act quickly and decisively if I wanted to reclaim my space and assert my boundaries before the big day arrived. The stage was set for conflict, and I was determined to take a stand. With the swimming party looming just days away, I felt a growing urgency to respond to Karen's audacious plans. The idea of allowing a swarm of guests to invade my private lake was unacceptable, and I knew that simply expressing my discontent would likely fall on deaf ears. That's when my thoughts turned to the geese, my feathery guardians of the lake. For years, a small flock of Canada geese had made their home by the water. They were an integral part of the landscape. Their honking calls echoed through the trees, and they patrolled the shoreline with a regal air. While they could be a nuisance at times, I had always appreciated their presence. They added a touch of wild beauty to the setting, and their spirited demeanor meant they weren't afraid to defend their territory. As I pondered my options, an idea struck me. What if I unleashed the geese during Karen's party? The thought brought a smile to my face. These birds were known for their assertiveness and could easily disrupt any gathering with their loud honks and unpredictable behavior. It seemed like the perfect way to reclaim my space without resorting to outright confrontation. I envisioned the scene, guests trying to enjoy themselves as the geese descended upon the area, honking and flapping their wings in protest. It would be chaotic, yes, but it would also send a clear message that my lake was not a playground for everyone, especially not for Karen's whims. I knew that some neighbors might raise an eyebrow at my unconventional solution, but at this point, I felt justified in my actions. After all, they had witnessed Karen's disregard for boundaries firsthand. As I put my plan into motion, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. This was more than just a protest. It was my stand against what felt like an invasion of my personal sanctuary. The day of the swimming party arrived, bright and sunny, as if nature itself was eager to participate in Karen's grand event. I could hear the sounds of laughter and splashing water drifting through the air, mixed with the unmistakable smell of barbecue sizzling nearby. As I stood on my porch, watching guests arrive with their floats and coolers, a pit of anxiety settled in my stomach. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. Karen had truly gone all out. Colorful decorations adorned the area, and a makeshift canopy provided shade for the guests. Children darted around excitedly while adults mingled, their voices rising above the sound of nature. I could see Karen at the center of it all, basking in the attention, her smile wide and triumphant. But as I surveyed the scene, I felt a surge of determination wash over me. It was time to execute my plan. With a deep breath, I made my way to the edge of the lake where the geese were gathered. They seemed to sense the excitement brewing in the air, honking softly as if they were waiting for their cue. I had decided to time their entrance perfectly with a crucial moment in the festivities, right when everyone was getting ready to jump in for a swim. As I approached with purpose, I gave a loud whistle, a signal that sent the geese into action. With surprising speed, they waddled toward the water, honking loudly as they moved. The commotion caught the attention of partygoers who turned to watch in confusion as my flock took charge of their territory. The moment they hit the water, their raucous honking intensified, echoing across the lake. Faces turned from smiles to shock as guests began to realize that this wasn't just a charming backdrop, it was an uninvited invasion. The scene unfolded just as I had envisioned, a chaotic clash between laughter and honking that would undoubtedly become a memorable moment in our neighborhood's history. As the geese splashed into the water, they created a scene of delightful chaos. Their honking filled the air, drowning out the cheerful chatter of partygoers and sending ripples across the lake. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment to reclaim their territory, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration watching it unfold. Guests froze in their tracks, eyes wide with disbelief as they witnessed my feathery army take command. Some laughed, others gasped in surprise, but all were captivated by the spectacle. The geese honked louder, flapping their wings as they made their presence known, creating a cacophony that echoed through the trees. A few children pointed with glee, while parents exchanged bewildered glances. It was a scene straight out of a comedy, and I was reveling in every moment. Karen, standing at the center of her festive gathering, looked utterly stunned. Her smile faltered as she tried to regain control over her guests while simultaneously processing the unexpected turn of events. "What is happening?" she shouted, her voice tinged with frustration as she waved her arms in an attempt to shoo away the intruders. But the geese seemed unfazed by her efforts. They continued to paddle around, honking defiantly as if they were declaring victory over any human interference. As some guests began to back away from the water's edge, laughter erupted from others who found humor in the absurdity of it all. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. My plan had worked perfectly. The tranquil day Karen envisioned had transformed into an unexpected spectacle that would be talked about for years to come. In that moment of chaos and laughter, I realized that I had effectively disrupted her carefully orchestrated event, making my point clear. This private lake was not a playground for anyone who thought they could simply take over without permission. The geese had unleashed a wave of hilarity and confusion, and I felt a sense of triumph rising within me as I watched it all unfold. As the cacophony of honks began to settle, the aftermath of the geese's invasion unfolded in front of me. The initial shock among the guests quickly transformed into laughter and chatter, as many found the scene simply too entertaining to ignore. Children giggled, pointing at the honking geese while their parents snapped photos, capturing what would undoubtedly become a legendary story for our neighborhood. Karen, however, was not amused. She stood by the shore, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her expression a mix of disbelief and irritation. As she attempted to regain control over her party, I could see her frustration mounting. "This is unacceptable," she exclaimed to no one in particular. Guests began to drift away from the water, clearly unsure if they should stay or leave in light of the chaos. I watched as some neighbors approached me, their faces lit with amusement. "That was brilliant," one said with a laugh, patting me on the back. Others chimed in, expressing their delight at seeing Karen's plans foiled. It felt good to know that my stand had resonated with them, even if it wasn't exactly the conventional way to handle conflict. Meanwhile, I noticed a few residents who had been on the fence about Karen's authority now exchanging glances filled with understanding. They seemed to appreciate my boldness in standing up to her and reclaiming my space. Perhaps this incident would spark a conversation about boundaries and respect within our community, something we desperately needed. As the party began to wind down and guests started packing up their belongings, I saw Karen make her way toward me. Her demeanor had shifted. There was a hint of begrudging respect mixed with irritation in her eyes. "You really went all out, didn't you?" she said dryly, trying to mask her frustration with forced politeness. "Just defending my territory," I replied with a smirk, knowing full well that this confrontation would be talked about long after today. The geese may have left the lake eventually, but their impact had made one thing clear: there were limits to what could be taken for granted in our little community. In the days following the swimming party, the atmosphere in our community was charged with excitement and debate. News of the geese incident spread like wildfire, and it wasn't long before the HOA called an emergency meeting to address the situation. Flyers announcing the meeting were posted around the neighborhood, urging residents to attend and share their thoughts. As I arrived at the community center, I could sense a palpable energy in the air. Neighbors gathered in small groups, animatedly discussing their opinions on Karen's party and my unconventional response. Some expressed sympathy for me, while others voiced support for Karen's desire to foster community spirit. The divide that had formed was now more pronounced, and I can see that this incident had ignited a larger conversation about personal boundaries versus communal activities. When the meeting commenced, Karen stood up to speak first, her demeanor tense but resolute. "While I appreciate everyone's enthusiasm for our community events," she began, "the recent incident with the geese was completely out of line. We must uphold a standard of respect for each other's properties." Her words were met with mixed reactions. Some nodded in agreement, while others whispered dissent. I took a deep breath and stood up to present my perspective. "I understand the importance of community events," I said, "but my private lake is just that, private. It should not be commandeered without permission." As I spoke, I could see nods of agreement from several neighbors who had felt similarly marginalized by Karen's unilateral decisions in the past. The discussion that followed was spirited. Some residents rallied behind my stance, emphasizing the need for better communication and respect within our community. Others sided with Karen, advocating for more organized events to foster neighborly connections. The debate raged on, with voices rising and falling as perspectives collided. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that this incident had sparked something significant, a call for change in how our HOA operated. While there was no immediate resolution to the tensions surrounding Karen's authority or my actions, one thing was certain: our community was ready to engage in a deeper dialogue about boundaries, respect, and what it truly meant to live harmoniously together. As the dust settled from the uproar surrounding the swimming party and the geese incident, I found myself reflecting on what had transpired and its larger implications for our community. The clash between my desire for privacy and Karen's push for communal activities had illuminated a fundamental truth. Striking a balance between individual rights and collective interests is no easy feat. Living in a neighborhood governed by an HOA inherently means navigating a fine line. While the intention behind such organizations is to maintain property values and foster community cohesion, it can sometimes lead to overreach, especially when members like Karen take it upon themselves to dictate how others should enjoy their own spaces. I realized that my lake was not just a body of water. It symbolized a sanctuary for me, a place of peace that I had cultivated over the years. Yet, my response had sparked a conversation that many neighbors seemed eager to have. It became clear that others also valued their privacy and personal space but may have been hesitant to voice their concerns. The swimming party had unwittingly exposed underlying tensions, revealing that while many residents appreciated community events, they did not want their personal boundaries trampled in the process. As I discussed these reflections with fellow neighbors in the days following the meeting, I found common ground with others who felt similarly protective of their homes. We began to share ideas about how we could engage more effectively with the HOA, advocating for clear communication and respect for each other's spaces. Ultimately, this experience served as a reminder of the importance of dialogue in any community. It highlighted that while we might have differing opinions on what constitutes appropriate behavior or acceptable boundaries, open conversations could bridge those divides. In reclaiming my space, I hadn't just stood up for myself. I inadvertently encouraged my neighbors to do the same, fostering a newfound sense of solidarity based on mutual respect and understanding. As I reflected on the events surrounding the swimming party and the ensuing chaos with the geese, it became apparent that this incident would have lasting implications for our community. What began as a personal confrontation over my private lake had evolved into a broader dialogue about boundaries, respect, and the delicate balance between individual rights and communal responsibilities. The aftermath of the party sparked a newfound awareness among residents about the importance of voicing their concerns regarding HOA decisions. No longer would they allow one person's desire for control to overshadow their own needs for privacy and peace. Conversations continued in the days that followed, leading to proposals for regular community meetings that would allow residents to share their thoughts and ideas openly, a step toward fostering a more inclusive atmosphere where everyone felt heard. Though Karen remained steadfast in her approach, the geese incident had shown her that her authority was not absolute. It served as a reminder that while community engagement is essential, it should not come at the expense of individual freedoms. I sensed a shift in how neighbors interacted with one another, as many began to advocate for a more collaborative relationship with the HOA, one grounded in mutual respect rather than top-down directives. Looking to the future, I felt hopeful. The unexpected chaos had not only brought laughter, but had also ignited conversations that were long overdue. Our community was ready to embrace change that honored both our collective spirit and our individual rights. As for me, I had learned an invaluable lesson about standing up for what matters most. The geese had become unlikely heroes in this saga, reminding us all of the importance of boundaries and the power of a united voice. As I enjoyed my peaceful lake once more, I knew its tranquility was now fortified by a deeper sense of community, one that promised to support each other while respecting our personal sanctuaries. The future looked bright, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next, geese or no geese.